Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Squid Game Season 1, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we immediately pick up in the middle of the tug-of-war game, and it's pretty much what I figured it was going to be. Just like, Sang-woo's plan was just like, let's loosen it up. They get completely caught off guard to the point like Gi-hoon is literally leg split over this gap, and so they're off balance. Some of them fell backwards. This is the time, pull, and you can tell as they're getting closer and closer to pulling the other team off the edge. You can see it on Gi-hoon's face of like he wasn't too happy about that, because it's like this is the first time this separates any other game, because every other game is an individual thing. You're only responsible for yourself. Like, you can try and help people, sure, but this is a situation where and Gi-hoon's staring at his hands later on, because this is the first game that he's directly responsible for someone else's death. Not just 10 people's deaths. So yes, they're all here for money, but this is the first time. And the fact is, he didn't say anything afterwards. He's not it's just kind of we all knew what we were accepting the moment we came here. So the fact is that we were that he did that. It's not like he's putting up much of a fuss. There is one dude on the team who is praying afterwards, and then 240 is she's like, why are you doing that? The fact is, you shouldn't be praying to God. You should be thanking Sang-woo and player number one, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't, if it wasn't for their strategies, we wouldn't have won. But it's a situation where he's talking about, obviously our Lord and Savior died for our sins, so it's they sacrificed for us, so that's why we're here. It's just okay, fine. But then she's like, first and foremost, though, you are a murderer. You just, it's right. So it's right. So if I have to, she's like, all right, I'll pray and pray, so I get to go into heaven. But then even, Sae-byeok is just kind of just stop. She just wants everyone to shut up, because it's just annoying. But I think it's also, it doesn't, once again, being directly responsible. These aren't people they're strangers, but also it's they're people just like you. They wanted money, but it's also that thing of we all know why we're in this, so we can't be too beat up about the fact. I mean, that people are gonna die regardless. We knew that when we returned to this game, but it's still just something else to know. You're responsible. But the fact is, I think it speaks volumes where it's kind of it's with Gi-hoon for a little bit, but it doesn't stay with him. They kind of move along, because it's this is just, it's survival. I figured as much. It's a one-on-one. It's the game is just only half the teams are going to survive. And so when they do come back, Deok-soo and his people are almost wait, that team won? They're surprised. And then Mineo is kind of yeah, I'm alive, you bastard. So afterwards, she's celebrating, being hey, and I think that's so important. They only showed you two groups, because I guess these two groups contain the people that our main cast of characters. Because amongst Deok-soo's crew, technically he's the most crucial character amongst his crew, and then the rest of the main characters are in Sang-woo and Ji-hoon's crew. So it's their team. So it is a situation of she's being oh yeah, it's thinking that old man's how'd you come up with strategy, but then immediately doesn't listen to his answer. And Ali calls her out for being oh yeah, you were the one who was saying, oh, I can't do this. And she's oh, you must have misheard. And she's calling him out for being a foreigner. It's oh, they're do you only come here to did you only come here to watch movies? Because she's oh yeah, the guy dodged the bullets. And he's oh, Matrix. That he understood the reference. But I guess it's because maybe he had an accent, or just is in this moment she's poking at him being a foreigner. Oh, do you have a green card? I bet not. It's supposed to be teammates. And she's talking about oh yeah, Deok-soo, it sucks. And he sucks and blah, 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 blah. It's but it's I love that Ji-hoon's oh, grandma. And she's grandma? No, which is I think it's just that, I think it's one of those Asian culture things that because I know anime and video games will poke fun at that of oh my God, you're 25? Ew, you might as well be dead. Granted, that's a very I think Gen Z joke kind of thing too, of just kind of, but I think it definitely gets played up in anime of oh, if you're ew, you're 30, you might as well be planning your your funeral because you're practically dead. You know, it kind of like gets played up in anime and stuff like that. Because I can think of a video game where like the cast of characters, like this guy's like, "Oh, you guys ill? You old people?" It's like, what are you talking about? We're old. Where like some of the characters are like, one character's like 20, another character's like in their mid 20s, another one's in their late 20s. I was like, oh, you little snot-nosed 17 brat. It's a video game where a character was saying that. So it's just, but it's a Japanese video game, so that's why I'm like, they kind of lean into that a little bit, like humorous wise about just age and stuff. But she's like, no, I'm Miss Han Negyo. So it's like, but it's like, she talks about she didn't get kicked off the team, she left, but Sungwoo was like, the fact is that they got an entire team of men. It's why you got dropped. It's almost like they knew what was about to come up game-wise, you know, so. But obviously they came up with the plan of like, right, we need to barricade ourselves in. And they even decided on like they're going to take shifts, 2 people at a time. That way they can keep each other up, and that way no one tries to betray the team too. You know, Sungwoo volunteered first, but also Ali as well. And then it's like Jihoon's like, I'll take watch after her, and you know, player one's like, I'll go with you. I'll take watch with you if you don't mind. He's like, no, I don't mind. It's like I like that there is a friendship there, but. Essentially, I love while they're building a barricade, Deoksu comes over and like he's like, oh, like the fact of the matter is, you think we could like this is gonna stop me, like we could get through this. But then I don't know whether he intentionally did this or whether this was like intentional mental warfare or psychological warfare, or whether it was just him being just blunt and honest. But it's like Deoksu, like, I'd be more worried if I were you. You are literally the strongest of us, so if another fight breaks out, people would most likely come after you, and Deoksu had to stop and think about it, because it's like, yeah, you're the biggest concern for everyone, because he was even saying, like, yeah, that team of yours, do you actually trust him? It's like, no, they're people he's forcing, like, he kind of makes submit to him, but it's like, right, they're not fully loyal to you. Like, if they got the opportunity, I mean, you're a backstabbing bastard, so, I mean, you already dumped, Minio, like, the moment you got a chance. So it's like, who's to say they won't do the same thing? Because, like, you could prove to be the biggest obstacle. So it's like, might as well work together next time a fight comes out. And so self-preservation, he's just like, oh, let's rest. Let's not, like, go after anyone. It's like, I'm giving you orders, so we're not going after anyone. It's like, okay. So it's just out of self-preservation of, like, right, I want to make sure I survive. So. But we learned a lot of really interesting things. Obviously, we learned a little bit more about Ali, about his circumstances. Obviously, he's got siblings as well as his mom and dad back in Pakistan. But he came to Korea to make money. But also, he's here right now to, you know, get money. Like, we don't know, like, I think it's not necessarily a debt situation. I think it's just purely like he's trying to take care of his family. So it's like, right, he's got a wife and son here. So he's got a lot of people he needs to take care of who are dependent on him getting money so that they could all survive. So... And Songwoo doesn't open up about his circumstances, but he's like, all right, I'm like you, I'm here for money. Then we got some insight into Jihoon's situation. Basically, the company he got let go from that he was working at 10 years ago, where he basically made parts like, parts to a car or whatever. So we got more insight into that basically there was a strike and the police, like, got involved, and, one person died, and I guess it was like either a good friend or someone he really knew, because like he's looking at it like happening, unfolding in front of him, and it's like, oh, the guy calls out, he's like, oh, Jihoon, and because even player one is like, oh yeah, I think I've heard about it. Now that you've added context, he was like, yeah, there was someone that died, but he's like, right, I shouldn't like be talking like that about it. But this all sparked that inside of Jihoon, because at the end of the day, like, basically, he was like, I was so angry because we lost our job. He's like, his daughter was just on the way at that time, and it's like he needed money to support his family. So we know how that ended, because he did start other businesses after he got, like, let go. But the point was, like, all of them needed the money. So this strife in him to, like, get money, like, it's been there for a while, you know. So, like, that fight in him to get money, like, is always there. It always has been. But like we learned, like, in the first episode, he had 2 other, like, businesses he tried after, like, losing his job at that motor company, but then, like, they failed, and now he's a chauffeur. So it's just a situation of, like, the bad luck of life just kept drawing, and he just kept trying to, like, worm his way back, just, you know, little things at a time. Even, like, he was just waiting for that big payday that would make it all okay, that he can finally take care of his family, that all the losses will be, like, put him back into black, essentially, and not into red. So obviously, player one's situation is kind of getting dire, so Jihoon lays him down, and Sabiok gives him the last of her water to like cool him down, and they take watch together. And he's like, "Oh, thank you very much for that." And she's like, "No, it wasn't for free. You're gonna owe me tomorrow." And he's just kind of like, "Yeah." He kind of scoffs, but then he kind of starts laughing because it's like right, because she ended up saying like, because some people in the group were like, "Hey, why don't we like find a weaker team than us and go like beat them up at least like." To kind of get rid of any other competition. But like Sabiak was like, oh yeah, like the guy like whose bed was near mine, he got killed by someone he trusted and they snapped his neck. And it's like, she's like, I don't trust anyone, especially here. Because Songwoo was also pointing out like we are the weakest team amongst everybody. So that was kind of an interesting situation going on with them. Now on the flip side of things, we got the more administrative side of things. Obviously, the doctor was called away to perform his work. So with Junho, we get the perspective on things of. Well, first and foremost, we know how they get around, like, the bodies. They make it seem like, hey, we're incinerating the bodies, but basically their insider, like, opens a latch and the body falls down below, and they pretend like, oh, yep, we incinerated the body. So, I guess there's usually probably nothing but dust left anyway, so if you can probably clear it away after the fact, you can make it seem like, oh yeah, like all you have to probably do is like make sure you get to that particular incinerator and make it seem like you cleaned it out or whatever. That way, like no one's suspicious of like, I mean, there's probably residue left from other stuff already, so you can just be like, oh yeah, like that last box we incinerated, like that's just residue from that, or just, you can probably like work your way around like covering up that there was nothing burned in this particular instance with that incinerator. But they've all been used multiple times, but like I said, they probably get washed in between type of thing. So, because in between the matches with the tug of war, they were cleaning up the spots. So, but the doctor gets to work. Obviously, it's kind of going a little slow because he hasn't been able to sleep. But there's a whole conversation between 28 and Junho because it's like, hey, 29, where were you last time? He's like, oh, sorry. The rest of the team wanted to kill you because they didn't think they could trust you. But I owed you because of the last dive. You saved my life, so we're even now. If you screw up again, that's on you. You're out. So, but they do their thing. And obviously they're talking about, we get a little insight about the doctor that basically it sounds like he killed one of his patients and that what sent him spiraling. They probably lose his practice and probably and be in a situation that he's in right now. But regardless of it all, they're like cracking jokes about like, oh, like, why don't you just like teach us a few tricks so we can do it? I would be worried about that because it's like, right, if they learned how to do it, that gives them less incentive to keep you around because it's like, right, they no longer need you. He never says that, but it's just kind of like, right, it's not going to be that easy. If you think it's that easy, just take over. But it's like, they talk about his work last time being sloppy, the eye situation. It's like that person was still alive. That was the issue. So they want people relatively alive long enough so that you can get them organs like pretty soon after they die instead of like if you wait too long, then they're less viable. Once again, I had that whole discussion, I think, literally last episode. This particular person was squiggling, so like that's why like the surgeries didn't go well, like getting the eye didn't go the way that he wanted it to, because he had to struggle around the person squirming because they were still alive, because they are selling these organs to. It ended up being an issue because they had complaints last time. And then they're talking about the zombie example of like someone with one kidney, and that piques Junho's interest. And they're like, why are you asking about that? Like, why are you talking like you weren't here? You were there during that. And he was like, oh yeah, like I was kind of out of it. It's like, no, you disposed of the body. What do you mean you were out of it? And he's reaching for his gun, but the doctor was like, calm, like shut up and let me do this. So 28 and Junho, who's 29, go to deliver everything. But the doctor's like, okay, let me know what the next game is. Like, we don't know yet. It's like, what do you mean you don't know yet? It's like, well, he hasn't told us. And it's like, he holds one guy hostage, ends up with that guy dead. I was like, oh boy. I was like, this is going to go super sideways. This entire operation is exploded. So he's running, the other guy's following him. But when the time, and it's like, well, obviously, the the doctor doesn't know his way around, so he ends up right back at the playground from the second game, the whole honeycomb situation. And the guy's like, hey, like, you can trust me. We can, like, the fact is, if a guard goes missing, that's not as bad as if a player goes missing. So we can still recover this situation. It's like, hey, this is what I look like. You've seen my face. We're in this together. We got it. Like, don't worry about it. And the moment he's about to stab him, the boss shows up and shoots him. Now, this is where we get really interesting into the psychology of this game, where the guy, what pisses him off, he's like, because I literally brought it up, like, a different episode, like, oh, like, do they really, how did this whole, like, secret operation happen underneath their nose? It's like, no, the boss is like, I know. The leader's like, I know that you were doing this. If you want to sell organs, do whatever you want to, fine, I don't care. But what pisses me off is that you made the game is supposed to be fair. These are people who, it's almost like there's, like, almost like, I don't know, like, it's weird pep to, like, his talk. I'm not saying I'm not describing it right, but essentially it's like these people had unfortunate circumstances of just like everything was kind of stacked against them. The world is unfair and stacked against them. This is their one chance to have a fair fight to win. So it's like, yes, these people are all dying, but at the end of the day, the game is meant to be fair because once again, no one's supposed to have an advantage, but the doctor gave Diaksu and his team the advantage by letting them know what was happening next. So for him, it's like, yeah, this is supposed to be a fair game that everyone, like, that's the design of it. And I think that's so fascinating that it's like, yeah, despite all the death and stuff like that, everyone knows what the deal is, but it's supposed to be a fair deal, and you compromise that by doing what you did. So he kills the guard, and then, like, the rest of the team ends up killing the doc, because I was like, oh, they're about to let him out of it? It's like, because he doesn't, so that's why they never found out what the next game was, because the leader probably found out. Like, so the person who was helping them in the computer room, like, with the cameras and stuff, they're probably not going to come after him, because it's like, granted, you played your role in it, but they probably just don't know who it is, but it gives them, like, it's just kind of like, well, we'll let that person live, because literally everyone else part of the operation is dead now, so the two other main people behind it are dead, the doctor's dead now, so no advantages for Diaksu and his people going forward. 28 and 29 are going off on their own, which we find out there's like an escape tunnel for the VIPs. There's a explosive set so that when the VIPs leave, that that tunnel can explode. That way they can, like, no one can follow them. But then, like, 29's asking so many questions that 28's getting suspicious of him again, and it's like, right, who are you? But it's like, right, you got your knife, I got a gun. Junho takes off his mask, and then this 28 takes off his mask. So once again, I'm always halfway expected, like, oh, if they take off the mask, is it going to be someone we know? But it turns out, like, once again, the person who had the one kidney was his brother. It's like, so that zombie you talked about, like, bashing with that, like, crowbar or whatever, that was my brother. Like, the other kidney, the reason why he only has one is because of me. It's like, no. The person you think it wasn't a male, it was a girl. And it's like, how do I know you're not lying to me? It's like, because we had sex with her before, like, everything. And it's like, we wouldn't do that if it was a guy. And I was like, you acting like that's better just shows how much of a terrible piece of shit you are. The fact is, you were like, oh, let's all take turns beforehand. It's like, Jesus. But then he's like, right, the fact of the matter is I can help you find your brother. We can get the organs and stuff like that, because it's like there's a list of everyone that's participated. So you can, and he's like, but like Junho kills him because it's like, no, you're a terrible person. Like, you're harvesting people's organs and selling them on the black market. But also it's like probably the byproduct of, I can't trust you. I also can't let you live knowing what I'm doing here. So he does sneak off on his own, and then we get some great insight into the game. Well, first, there's also the boss, like, cleaning house, where it's like, right, so they ended up, like, sounding any alarms. All the people are, like, outside of their rooms. They see that 28's room is empty because they already know, they scanned the mask and know the guy that's dead is 28, and they know there's at least one more person involved. And they look in 29's room and it's empty, so it's like, we know exactly who we're looking for. So they're, Junho is investigating. He ends up in the leader's room and ends up finding the file room. And this is where we get really interesting insight, because I was like, okay, at first it's like, so 99 is the earliest date it seemed like we saw, but then we looked through the records, the first ever game was 88. And now we got context of, because I was like, how long has this operation been going? It's been going 30 plus years. That basically this is the 31st 4th game, because these games are, and also the games are held annually. And he goes through all the files from like, because obviously there's files up to 2020, but this is the 2021 games, I think. Not unless these counts as a 2020 game. So either way, either this is the 33rd round or the 34th round, depending on what year this technically is. Because I didn't pay attention to what, I don't know, I don't remember if they were, because he was looking through Jihoon, like this current round of players for his brother. And some interesting insight is that, well, first and foremost, knowing that is held annually and that, but then he looks at the winner's book. And so it is clear, and this is something I pretty much figure Sungwoo probably is thinking this, and everyone else probably hasn't come to this conclusion yet. There can only be one winner. Like, whatever that final game is going to come down to one final person, because, like, if you notice, it's like, oh, round 6 winner. Every year, there's only one winner. And I think it was like the one from 2015. 2015's winner was his brother. So I think that adds a legitimacy to what I brought up before of like, I figured his brother was going to be a player. I figured his brother must be someone who's administrative. Now, the fact is they're still hiding his identity. And there's also another person's whose identity they've hidden. We've seen blurry, like far away looks at his face, but a leader. So I'm assuming is like, do leaders eventually, like, is that how are the leaders of these games chosen? Because I doubt it's the same person all these years later. So it might be a situation of its previous winners, like maybe a certain winner is chosen. The kind of like maybe like a certain winner is chosen, and you can either take over the game or you could do something else. And maybe his brother chose to lead the game, or maybe, like I said, maybe he just wanted the other administrative. But I think that shows his position, because I brought it up like, why, like, so he had the card because he was a participant a few years ago, but now he's moved up in the ranks because he's a winner, and now I guess it opens up, like, you can probably like either walk away or you can like continue this system. And like maybe when a winner's, because I was about to say, I wonder like if a winner's decided. Like, could it be, like, either they had the opportunity to replace the current leader, but if that was the case, like, his brother won in 2015, so why would he still be here these years later? So, maybe every subsequent winner decided to leave and not be associated with the game, but maybe some people decide, like, right, like, it's twisted, but in their, like, in the leader's own way, because the whole, like, fair world, fair game type of thing. It does seem like it's like, right, these people are in a terrible situation and they're like at the ends of the rope. So it's like, I'm going to help them. Like, I am doing a good service to for this world type of situation. So it was some interesting insight into all of that. So we'll have to wait to get more clarity on that. But at the end, as they're looking for Junho, they're telling all the participants, like, remaining in the game, it's like, right, gather up. So, but player 1 won't get out of the bed. I was like, oh, can he not move? It to a certain extent, but it's like he was afraid to get up because he peed himself, because he probably couldn't get up, like lost probably control of his bladder and just couldn't get up, and just whatever the case may be, and he didn't want anyone else to see him like that. And Ji Hoon does, but it's like, it's like, right. He knows he's the only one that knows the old man's circumstances, and he's trying to be there to support him and help him because that legitimately is his friend. And so he wants to make sure they're all get out of this, but they probably won't. Once again, there's no like team winning. Maybe there's potential for a team winning, multiple winners, but where things currently stand, it seems, and based on the round 6 winners, there's only one winner per year, so it comes down to that. So even if the others are taken out of play, like this team of 10 people, like if the future games, because we still got 3 more games to go, the next 2 games, if they don't wipe out and whittle down like this team of 10 with Ji-kun and his people, then I said Ji-kun, Ji-hoon and his people, then that round 6 definitely will. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.